Hey there, everyone. So, as some people might know, I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Pokemon series, but I haven't really been really interested in a lot of the games in the last 10 years because I just don't think they've been very good. Ever since Gen 6 came around with X and Y, I wasn't very impressed. And, I kind of felt like after it went to the 3DS, it really kind of declined in quality for the mainstream games. Now, you're entitled to have your opinion and love the games as much as you want. If you enjoy the games, that's fantastic. But, I just kind of got disappointed in the series, and I kind of focused on the first 5 gens instead because I thought they were a lot more interesting. So then we get this announcement for Pokemon Legends Arceus. Now, personally, at first, I was not really that interested in this game, but now that more information has come out about it, I actually think it might be a very interesting game. And people are actually talking a lot about different Pokemon fan theories. Now, the one that I see a lot recently is this idea of the Unown coming back and having some sort of purpose or some sort of, they're being built upon as a subject. And the Unown have always been kind of disappointing in the Pokemon series because it always felt like they wanted to do something really big with these things, but they just never got around to doing it for one reason or another. And the most that we really learn about them are in the Johto games, like Gen 2 and Heart Gold Soul Silver and Gen 4. People are really interested in it because in the original Sinnoh games in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, they felt like they didn't really, it felt like they had potential, but they didn't have the opportunity to flesh it out, or it didn't work out, or something along those lines. And so basically, people are revisiting this subject because they think it's very interesting. However, I find a lot of the theories surrounding the Unown to be kind of unsatisfying. I think, a lot of people think that the Unown gain their power necessarily from, they're spelling words, and because they can become any word, they can become, powerful in any specific way that you define. And I don't really think that's really kind of what they're getting at. And I'll explain through this video where I think the possible inspiration of the Unown came from. The thing about the Unown is that a lot of people focus on the fact that they're letters, and I think that a lot of this comes from the fact that, we're Western, we recognize these characters as letters. But don't you think it's pretty weird that these games that supposedly take place in, essentially an alternate universe version of Japan have these Romanized characters? And it's not just these characters that are representing the Romanized alphabet. They've also existed for over 1,500 years in these ruins, right? So this means that the Unown have lasted longer than even the characters that we supposedly are basing them off of. So clearly they're not actually just letters that spell out things. But I think what's really unsatisfying about this theory is that it actually ignores a lot of the other aspects of the Unown that make them so interesting. So, for example, I think what's really weird about the Unown is that essentially when you first explore them in the inner ruins in Pokemon Crystal, you notice that these are basically a bunch of letters that are staring at you on the walls. There's all these freaking eyes that are on the walls of the ruins. It's a little freaky when you notice it. And I think the reason why people don't notice it at first is because they think, oh, it's a Pokemon, right? But when you actually think about it, that is kind of freaky. You have all of these letters with eyes that are staring at you the moment you walk into these ruins. And another thing that's really weird about them is that they spell out words behind people's backs. In fact, the scientists have pointed out in parts of the game that they rearrange themselves on the wall, apparently, when they're not looking. They're like, whoa, we didn't see this there before. What's that? I think it's really interesting how there's this obvious psychological effect that the Unown have. It's almost as if when you enter the ruins of Alph, you kind of go a little fucking crazy, and there's a very subtle nature to it where when you think about it a little bit deeper than just, oh, there's these scientists researching it, there's these tourists who are exploring. It's a little weird, and it's making people do weird things in this area. And not only this, but the Unown are injecting a radio signal into your Pokegear. They're making you hear things in the radio. I'm just gonna hold up and say, this is really weird because it's not just spelling things. This sounds a lot like paranoid schizophrenia. Now you might be like, hold up. That is a game theory moment. Pokemon doesn't have severe mental illness in it. That's just ridiculous. Why would you say such a thing? Well, I think that it's actually really interesting to point out and emphasize the element of radio, which might seem unrelated at first. But where it ties in is that there is this sort of media criticism that is going on throughout the game through the radio tower. You might wonder why Pokemon Gold and Silver have this emphasis on radio so heavily through the game when it's literally just an aesthetic UI element that doesn't have any real gameplay features. Well, it's because the plot of the Johto region basically is a criticism of mass media proliferation. You have the Goldenrod radio tower that is transmitting a specific set of messages across the entire Pokemon region. When we go into the ruins of Alph, we discover that those transmissions are not necessarily something that is like this sort of abstract direct connection from the radio tower and Professor Oak and Mary to your Pokegear, but rather a physical thing that is carried through some sort of substance, actual radio wave. And this is what the Unown appear to be influencing. And what is really interesting about this is that this is a foreshadowing for later in the game where Team Rocket does the Mahogany Town thing where they build the makeshift radio transmitter that is causing all the Pokemon in the region to go crazy. And they basically use that same program, replicate it on after hijacking the Goldenrod radio tower, and are pretty much about to cause all the Pokemon in Johto to go crazy through using this concentrated transmission tower. And they're only stopped by you, right? And what this is representing is it's representing the sheer amount of power that mass media has over people. There is a radio pretty much in every single house in Pokemon Crystal. It's crazy. And you might be asking yourself, well, okay, well, how does this all connect together? Well, I can't think of anything that connects the ideas of schizophrenia with mass media criticism and the impacts of society and the production of subjectivity and... Wait, what? Huh? Oh, wait, that's what I based my entire channel off of. Now you might be thinking, hey, whoa bro, don't you think it's kind of fanfiction-y that you want to insert your favorite French psychoanalyst philosopher into your favorite Pokemon game? Yes, but I do have an argument to say that this is actually probably a real possible influence on the production of the games. You see, in the 1980s, when Game Freak was first created as this sort of independently published magazine, and what they did was they talked about like game design and stuff like that, right, and technology. There was a movement in Japan and Europe and other places across the world regarding radio. So basically what was happening was all these countries were trying to say, hey, wait a second, we should actually control the radio waves. You know, you have to get licenses in order to transmit at certain frequencies, and this produces this sort of, structure of power regarding radio. Now the thing about radio is like, just like in the games, it's not just this abstract transmission line. It's actually a physical thing that everyone actually can interact with on a direct level if they know the technology. And so this criticism came out where it was saying that basically we shouldn't commodify radio, we should make radio something that everyone can be aware of. And this movement is often called free radio or pirate radio. And there was a lot of stuff in Europe going on at the time in the 1970s regarding free radio, which Guattari was actually directly involved with. He was writing about, he was having his experiences influencing his own writing and his own theories at the time. And his work also extended through the 80s. His work was influencing other radio movements across the world, and he was influencing this movement in Japan through his theories. So essentially what happened was this guy in the 70s, who is a psychoanalyst who basically works with schizophrenic people and has written extensively about how schizophrenia interacts with capitalism, mass media, etc., is directly influencing a media movement that is based around the control and proliferation of radio on the level of individual users. In fact, he even flew over to Japan multiple times and, interacted with these movements and even wrote about it. And for some reason just keeps talking about how they all climb Mount Everest. I really don't know what that's about. Basically, this guy had a massive influence on media and cultural analysis in the 1970s and the 1980s, at the same time that Game Freak was really kind of starting to, emerge as its own sort of entity. Now, I can't read Japanese. I don't know what's in these zines. Maybe there's something that completely betrays my theory, but I think it would still be very interesting nonetheless to kind of explore and possibly consider this possibility that Pokemon is actually directly influenced by French post-structuralist theory.